Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for Freya. Freya is a unique mage ADC, utilizing melee basic attacks and only getting the use of ranged basic attacks through one of her abilities. She has a pretty weak early game, but getting Freya to late game is basically victory insurance, even when the god isn't as good as she is now. One of the reasons Freya is so good right now is because of her builds. The new Bancroft's glyph pictured here is a real star for her, and the rest of the items she buys is what's been the regular fare for her prior to the glyph's inclusion. Relics wise, it's 100% beads and ages, so you're really not going to make it through the match as Freya with anything else. The core of Freya's effectiveness as a late game monster ADC though is her passive. Freya starts with 10% lifesteal, which scales with levels, all the time. Woo! If you're new to ADCs, lifesteal is a core on every single one of them, so you'll be hard pressed to ever see an ADC without it. So Freya having some built in, which stacks with strong lifesteal items, is a godsend for her, enabling her to take great basic attack trades even when her damage alone is only equal or slightly behind the enemies. So let's jump ahead real quick to Freya's second ability. This is the ability which grants Freya ranged basic attacks, as well as damaging and slowing in an AoE around the first damaged enemy. So this means that even with just this ability alone, Freya's basics do bonus damage should the enemy hit. And we're not done with this ability, but it's important you know how it interacts with her first ability. Freya empowers her blade, getting very high damage on basic attacks. However, this ability also works in conjunction with her second ability, meaning that now, your heavily empowered basic attacks are also ranged. Basic attacks used in this way, not creating the AoE splash effect. And let's get it out of the way now, these basics hurt. Like, real bad. They start the game about equal with a hunter's basic attacks, slowly but surely increasing in damage as the game goes on, eventually hitting for the same if not more than the average hunter's critical strikes. Only the thing is, Freya hits that hard every single basic attack, no crit chance here. First off though, let's just get it out of the way. The optimal way to activate these basic attacks is 2, then 1. Your 2 lasts for a second longer than your first ability, so this is the only order you ever want to do this in. But also, I'm sure you can already tell the downsides to this combo. Firstly, it has a cooldown, whereas no other ADC has a cooldown solely to have the chance to use ranged basic attacks. Secondly, since Freya's second ability is the only thing she has for wave clear, clearing the wave and then moving in with your 2-1 combo for a trade is a no-go, so you have to choose between clearing the wave or fighting. Freya is literally not capable of doing both. And finally, since this is really all Freya has in terms of damage outside of her ultimate, in that sense all the damage in her base kit is able to be body blocked both by minions and gods alike. So as I'm sure you guessed, Freya's early game is pretty awful. But it doesn't have to be. I don't touch on specific item interactions for posterity, but Conduit Gem is pretty important for Freya. When Conduit Gem hits a minion, it hits for double its base damage, totaling 40 true damage. So, certainly good to help with Freya's clear, but the kicker here is that Conduit Gem will affect any new enemy hit during the entire duration of Freya's 2. This means that Freya's normal plan of hitting the wave before the 2 waves clash and smushing the wave up with the slow on the AoE is heavily bolstered by this item, but also, if your lane opponents are too aggressive and don't let you smush the wave, you can still hit the melee minions with some of your 2's duration and still get respectable damage on the archers too with just one hit. If you're well versed with Freya, you don't need Conduit Gem to do well on her, but if you're new to the character, now's the time to learn her, as this item makes her laning significantly easier. Back to using the 2 and the 1 together though. Of course, 2-1ing is the best way to get the most out of the combo, but sometimes you just want to start off with the 2, then once you have them in a better range, start turboing it with your 1. While you want to play back as Freya early, once your damage starts coming online, usually after the acquisition of Haste and Ring, you do genuinely want to start getting in people's faces as Freya with your crushing damage and lifesteal. She is still quite susceptible to ganks and dives though during the entire match, with only her third ability in her main kit to help her. Freya banishes all enemies in a small circle AoE. Yeah. This ability is Freya's most iconic move, given its ability to be used offensively, defensively, or fuck up a teammate's combo. So this is Freya's only form of CC in her entire kit, meaning that this ability has the potential to grant Freya kills, but also save her with well-timed appeal. Needless to say, it's very open-ended. You can absolutely use it in a one-on-one situation. When you're first starting, I'd recommend using it as follow-up with your team when you're already being aggressive. Say your tank hits an enemy with a CC, and once they try to beat a retreat, you follow up with your 3, little things like that. This is where that whole messing up your teammates' combos comes in though. Since the CC banishes them completely, nobody, and I mean nobody, can touch them while they're CC'd. So this ability is purely setup when being used aggressively. So if you're in comms, literally scream when you're about to use this ability. For some of us, this is easier than others, but I digress. And then of course use it while chasing too. Getting banished while running away never feels great. As for using it defensively, well, you can just use it preemptively at a distance, but sometimes this will just leave you wide open from other enemy gods. Typically it's good to let them fully commit on you, then banish them. Letting enemy gods get in your face before CCing them may seem like a poor decision, but it works in part thanks to just how long the CC lasts, and of course in part thanks to her ultimate. Freya becomes CC immune and flies into the air, becoming completely untargetable once in the air. Freya remains in the air for 3.6 seconds, during which time she is able to fire up to 4 projectiles which land in an AoE, dealing absolutely massive damage, to the point that it's one of the hardest hitting ultimates in the game. Freya can space these shots apart, or choose to simply hold down the basic attack button and let them all fly. All in all, a stellar ability, giving Freya essentially a 3.6 second Aegis to buy herself and her team time, while also being able to pump out insane amounts of damage. This has its caveats though. Freya doesn't gain any movement speed while casting this ability and still incurs the backpedal speed penalty, meaning that you can run at enemies full speed, but turning to shoot while running away is still inadvisable. That said, with a good look at the battlefield like this, keep an eye out for how the fight's going. Sometimes slipping into the air at the right time leaves the enemy team wide open to an engage. Needless to say, you can do some crazy shit with this ability, but when you're new to Freya, keep it simple. When it's blatantly obvious that you should use this to chase people down for a kill, fire your shots and cancel out the ability the instant you're done firing. If you're obviously too deep and about to get CC'd into oblivion, boom, pop the ult, and try to save the ult for when you're new to her for some safety, and get more creative with it as you play Freya more. Alright, so here was a pretty good match with Freya, and obviously I don't want to do combos with Freya, so instead I'm going to give you commentary over a few different examples of what can happen with Freya in a match. Here's getting a kill in lane with Freya. Obviously I'm with an Atlas, one of the best supports right now, but he goes pretty aggressive, so Freya early game is really death by 1,000 cuts, but let's give it a watch here. So I hit both parts of the wave with my conduit gem. The Ganesh dashes on the Atlas, probably thought the Hoyi would be more aggressive, but obviously Atlas picks him up, throws him right into our minion wave. I'm just chasing down, use the minions to avoid the Hoyi's basic attacks, turn on him with the slow. Ganesh tries to move into block, but then I just start hitting him, slowing him. Ganesh peels again, so I go to body block with my 1, he pops the shell, but Atlas gets the flip again with the 2, and I just pop him down with the 2 there. So, really easy, obviously carried a lot by the Atlas, but that's how Freya is. She just follows up with her basic attacks while the support does all the heavy lifting, no pun intended. Alright, so here's an example of Freya's trade potential once you start hitting that sort of mid to late game here. Obviously we have our Nimble Bancrofts, Hasten Ring, Shaman's Ring. This is really where Freya should start picking up, so we were around even at this time. They had exerted a lot of pressure on our side, but we made a bit of a comeback. I think I was a little bit ahead on gold, but all in all, I'd say we're pretty even, but just watch how much of a positive I go on here. So he was being a little silly, not knowing where I was, and using the Ricochet. The Ricochet is obviously a huge part of Hoyi's trade potential, and that's how I knew, okay, I have a really good shot here to kill him, no pun intended. So just start off by slowing him. Obviously he's behind the minions. Once he gets out from behind the minions, I activate the 1. And then just finish him off with the ult. I mean, that damage is just crazy. I pretty much 100 to 0'd him. But just look here when I switch over to the 1. I mean, just starts shredding his life. He was a little silly to go direct on the minions. He had the Aussie proc, so he's probably like, oh, I'm just going to lifesteal the minions. I just shredded right through his health because it was like 350 a shot or something like that. Something crazy. For ability leveling, you want your 2 at level 1, your 1 at level 2, and your 3 at level 3. From there, you want to level your 2, your 1, then 3. Leveling your ult to level 5, but holding off on leveling it until your 2 and 1 are max level. If you need to learn ADC fundamentals, there's no god quite like Freya to get your hat into the ring. She relies pretty much exclusively on her basic attack damage, with the get out of jail free card ability and a main CC ability purely focused on setup and peel. So in that sense, Freya may sound like a god locked away to those well versed in the ADC role already, but that doesn't have to be the case. The number one thing you can do while learning to ADC is follow your tank's lead, especially with Freya. Without her supports, well, support. In whatever playstyle she's going for, Freya is not very self-serving until well into the match. So if your support is playing back, you're playing back. And if your support's aggressive, you're aggressive. Luckily, Freya's slow in her second ability and rock solid CC with her 3 means that she can really fit both playstyles in lane well. And given that she doesn't get too far behind, she will always, and I mean always, come through late game. No matter how bad Freya has been in the meta, she's always showed up in the late game swinging. And once you hit your 4th or 5th item, you are a problem for anyone on the enemy team. Again, so long as you're not too far behind. So give Freya a bit of patience while you're getting your bearings with her, and then be prepared to dominate every single match that goes into the late game. For that reason, buckle up for some nasty ganks on you early, and even into the mid game. If getting Freya to the late game is a win condition, making sure the enemy Freya doesn't get to the late game is a win condition too. So again, take it slow to start, but once you hit the late game, be sure to flex your damage and run through everyone that gets in your way. That's all I have on Freya for now. Thanks for watching.